to board directors. One of the things that we heard before we started even the soliciting feedback on our profile for our next superintendent, that folks wanted us to come back to them with what we had learned, share with them our leadership profile and reports. Those meetings have been scheduled. I think that there's about 10 of them. It's on us as board directors to be present at them, and I know many of you have already responded with your availability. You'll see both the meetings, the times, and the dates online, along with who will be present. I am the only one at some of the meetings, so please, board directors, take a look specifically if you haven't provided responses yet and see if you're able to join. I know Director Rankin has graciously offered to also join some additional meetings with me. After tonight, our next board meeting will be on September 24th. It will be our second board meeting of the month, where we will have our work session. We will have our presentation from ERS. We will also have an update on enrollment / October shuffle. I think that just so we are aware, we will have a presentation on lunches before public testimony today, but we will start public testimony at 5, and if we don't get to student comments before then, we will do it directly after public testimony. With that, I am going to hand it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, President Todd. It's such a great time of year. I've had the privilege over the last couple of weeks to make more than 16 school visits, and it's just so great what you see in each of those buildings. My usual routine from talking to school leaders and staff from the board. As a parent considering enrolling a student in your school, what would you want to show me? And the answers and the information I get is always so compelling and optimistic and inspiring, really. So it's a great experience. I really want to thank directors who have joined me on some of the visits. Some of the time in buildings have also been ribbon cuttings, where we open 3 new buildings, and they are just remarkable. Seattle Public Schools builds superb school buildings, and I hope our students, I hope our community see those beyond the brick and mortar. It's just a testament to the respect and love we want to show students. We are going to have a briefing about school lunch, which has obviously been a big subject. Speaking of visits, we were visited on Monday by probably 400 students. I got who came and talked about, and nicely done, folks that are organizing on this issue. I think people were safe, people were respectful. I met with Dr. Torres Morales and I, and Eric Kersey met with several of the students for more than an hour and had a really great discussion and talked through the issues. It was great to have that conversation. Again, we're going to talk about school lunch a little bit later, so I won't belabor the point. I do think for this group, one thing I'm struck by in this conversation is we've talked a lot about student outcomes and what students can know and do, and we should be. That's our core business. Sometimes maybe we need to talk about more what students experience, which may be an input into our thinking, but it's an input that really matters. And so I think that's one of the things we need to think more about. We have some other consequential things on the agenda tonight. We'll give the directors an update on our strategic planning effort and where we are in advance of a deliverable that we're going to present to you next week. And then we've had a few discussions and some community outreach on our safety policy, and that's on the agenda. So plenty to do. We squeezed in a briefing, so I will shut up and back to you.
All right, so for the briefing, we're going to head to the table. Please bring your microphones. And we're going to move to the next item, which is the high school. this U shape has gotten smaller, so for some reason. But it's nice to be closer to folks. All right, so this is a briefing on our high school lunch program. So obviously something that has gotten a lot of attention. We had students come out and protest. And I think that there have been many directors talking with student leaders at schools. Director Yoon organized a good office hours with Director Clark, Director Mizrahi, and myself and students as well. She was an amazing facilitator as we heard from students on this specific topic. I think that it will be helpful for all of us just to have a common understanding of the facts and what's going on, and also sort of next steps. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Podesta.
Thanks again, President Taub. I just want to make a few points, and we'll ask Associate Superintendent Dr. Torres describe the complexity that, and then make sure everybody has access to food and meals wherever they get it, whether they get it from us or someone else. I do think, and you'll see that list that we were trying to balance, staff were trying to balance in establishing schedules and really a return to multiple lunches at comprehensive high schools, which has been the norm for many years. We drifted away from that because of the constraints around COVID. So we may have not really foreseen how big a change this was, because for the current cohort of high school students, they haven't experienced it before. And the fifth thing on that list, which everyone is making us very aware of now, is the time for the non-class time for students to be with each other, to participate in other non-class activities. You know, I said we were balancing four things. There's obviously a fifth. I will apologize again and many times as people would like. The way this happened is completely on us. The decision we made as we were planning for this year in the spring, and clearly it didn't land it right in buildings. There's perhaps a slight bit of a silver lining in that is that will make us really focus on this issue, because we had underlying pre-existing issues with the high school day and achieving goals that matter. We talked a little bit about this as a compliance issue. It is. We have to decide what it is we really want. I think our goals are already in alignment with contracts and board policy and state law. So I think we're going to have to prioritize. I'll borrow a line from myself that we talked about when we talked about wait lists, is compared to all the problems we could have, this is all in our control. This is something we made, this is something we can change. What we can't do is change how many minutes there are in a day, so we're going to have to prioritize. But this, this can be figured out. Like everything, not everyone's going to get everything, but it's a matter of establishing priorities and make a change. Unmake a change, we can refine a change. So I think what we're trying to accomplish today is just to explain how we got, or what our goals and constraints are, talk about how we might be able to make it better, and then get your feedback. So I will turn it over to Dr. Torres Morales.
Good evening, board directors. So we're going to start with one of the issues that came up in this is, why did the high schools have to go to 30-minute lunches? So that was one of the first things that arose. And so we think about the number of instructional hours required for our high schools and for high school students. It's 1,080 instruction hours per year. So that's a best practice that we believe in, and also something that aligns with the state requirement. If you look at a lot of other states around the country, that is a pretty standard requirement. So there's a reason why we go in that direction as well. We're not an outlier in that. So our high school day starts at 8:50 and ends at 3:40. Passing time does count as instructional minutes, so when you put the 5 minutes passing on each side, those do get to count as instructional minutes. If there are lunch and clubs, or clubs during lunch, those don't count. So your lunchtime doesn't count towards the instructional minutes, neither do clubs. And so when you start to put the whole puzzle together, what you see is that at a 30-minute lunch, that ensures that as a school district, we're giving each of our high school students 1,093 hours in a school year, which is it's ahead of the requirement of 1,080. So that begs the question, why are we 13 hours ahead? Part of that is because we have to account for inclement weather days, et cetera. If we do not, and then we have an inclement weather day, we have to extend the school year at the end of the year. And so the extra hours in there account for if we have to do a late start some days, if we have to call a snow day, those sort of things. If we were to extend the lunch to 35 minutes, it actually puts us short of the 1,080 hours that we would need to stay in compliance with the law and what we think is best practice for instructional contact time for students. If you're running the schedule, what you're gonna look at is say like, well, 30 minutes of lunch in 5 days. Remember, there's certain things like Wednesdays, all of our schools are on a different schedule on early release. And so that is a little bit different. So I just wanted to make sure that we were aware of that. And there's also early release days that happen in December and in June. So one of the things to think about is that the 30-minute lunch is supposed to be to allow us to hit the 1,080 hours of instructional time. And it's supposed to, the way it's supposed to work is students need time to get lunch, 20 minutes to sit and eat their lunch, and time for personal care and hygiene. So what we have to guarantee at the school district that we're giving every single kid time to get their lunch, sit and eat for 20 minutes, and also take care of personal hygiene. Which is why it is a challenge at our larger comprehensive high school if we don't go to multiple lunches, because we have to be able to, we're guaranteeing that for every single kid and within 30 minutes. Some of the stuff that we've been hearing, so key interests, that it's the concern with splitting up the lunches in a lot of ways has to do with the time to do the food and socialize. A lot of our schools started using the lunchtime for their clubs, so clubs and activities have been impacted by this because not all kids could be in clubs at the same time. Some students were accessing academic supports during that time. And there's also been some safety concerns about the number of students that would be together if we did one big lunch, and so that we wanted to call that out as well. I will say that Superintendent Podesta and I, we spent time with students who were down here earlier this week. We spent over an hour with them. Yesterday, me and Superintendent Podesta were with the ASB leadership from our high schools, and we had a listening session with them for an hour to talk through all of the issues. One of the things this clearly raises for us is that we have issues that we need to deal with the high school schedule in general. If these are all things that are priorities for us, which they are, we want students to have clubs, we understand clearly, especially from students, the importance of the extracurriculars for the college application, that this is something we need to figure out how to provide in the school day, while we're also providing the time for lunch. So the question there becomes, how are we going to continue to work with students to make sure that we're actually meeting the needs that they have while we're complying with laws and what we think are best practices. So we've made a commitment that we will continue those meetings with ASB leadership. We're going to meet with them again in 2 weeks, and then we're going to have a standing weekly or monthly meeting with them to talk through some of these issues. So encourage the students who are listening, please reach out to your ASB leadership. They're having time with me specifically, sometime with Superintendent Podesta, to talk through these issues so we can land at a more solid solution as to what we're going to do for next steps as a school district.
And I would add, that construct of us, it was a remote space for the school leaders and their ASB leadership. Right? We haven't done that recently. I don't know if it's ever been in practice. So perhaps that's another innovation that will come out of it. This is try something new. So I don't think that standing meeting is just about lunch. This is a new way for us to interact with school leaders and their student leaders at the same time. So I'm hoping that pans out.
Yeah. So in the short term, we're reviewing current schedules and having conversations with school principals. We are getting our next update tomorrow from the school leaders as to what's going on with the schedules, how the conversations are going with students, what their next steps are. Superintendent Podesta and I have a meeting with the comprehensive high school principals Friday morning to review some more of that information and see where we're at in next steps. And then we're going to have the ongoing meetings with student leadership. Some of the long-term considerations are what we mentioned, that we need to figure out how we're working through this, because this is a bigger issue for all of us, especially for our high school students. We understand the clubs, we understand the extracurriculars, and we need to figure out how we're going to do this, and we can solve this together. But we also have to stay within parameters and constraints that we have, and so what we're going to do about that is something we need to all get in space and work out. So.
And one last point, we do have some ambitious goals. Goal 3, in the way we're thinking about our strategic plan about high school graduation rates, completing high school and beyond plans. We really need to think as our schedule, whether it's advisory or other supports, doesn't really offer that in a way. It's something we're gonna have to talk about. And then, maybe this is a spoiler alert, sometime in the next few months, we're gonna be having our second favorite conversation after school lunches about bell schedules. We've talked about this for the last few years as part of thinking about transportation optimization and our financial challenges. So we need to look at the school day because of this issue and other really important issues. So, again, the way it came up, it was unfortunate, and I'm sorry about that, but we really need to have a focus on it anyway.
All right, so I know that there are a lot of directors who have comments or feedback about this. I want to make sure we know we're stopping at 5, so just be respectful of other folks' time. Just, so I'm gonna go first, I think I can be really quick. Pre-COVID, all our comprehensive high schools had multiple lunches. Except for,
Lincoln, and at the time they were enrolled, I only believe 9th and 10th grade.
okay, during COVID, we moved to one lunch, essentially at home, an hour-long lunch.
Yes. Well,
Not every.
Okay.
We had a variety of constraints, post-COVID, and certainly the first year back, all bets were off on how we were serving lunch in all our buildings.
Okay. And now, yeah, so post-COVID, we came back, some schools had an hour-long lunch, one lunch. Some schools came back with multiple lunches, and some schools came back with one 30-minute lunch. And then we dictated a change for 30 minutes to get our instructional time. And then sort of what I'm hearing is from an operational perspective, both to make sure we're serving all the kids who need lunch, and also, I think for a safety concern of splitting up lunches from one lunch to 2 lunches.
A little bit, and it would be that for kids to get lunch period, not just the kids we're serving. So even if you have, for example, your seniors going off campus, we still have to make sure that we're giving them enough time to go wherever they're going, be able to get a meal, sit for 20 minutes, use the restroom, get back and get into class. So it's not just about the kids who are getting lunch at school, but yes. And then the other part I would say is that in general, a lot of the schools that went to one lunch all were at 1 hour. There were very few that were at 30 minutes. And then when we brought up the instructional hours issue was when many schools switched to 30 minutes, and then they scheduled one lunch for 30 minutes, which compounded the problem.
Ideally, obviously, Superintendent Tedesco, you said, you tried to, this directive was given last spring, and the goal was to have this rolled out smoothly. That didn't happen. You apologized for that. What are we doing to make sure things like that don't happen again?
We talked about this a little bit, actually, at the audit committee yesterday. There is a priority we identified in our strategic planning about a new structure for unified leadership and looking at our organization. That's a really significant concern because we'll be talking a lot about educational strategies, other things we're trying to implement, and if we're having trouble, having a plan and design in the central office that's about lunch and having trouble making sure that's landing in our buildings, how are we going to support, MTSS, how are we going to support some of the other things that are important to us? So that, we have to step back and do lessons learned on this, all the analysis, root cause analysis, where is it within the central office and within the buildings? This wasn't clear because it was clear to some of us, it clearly wasn't clear to all of us, and I'm happy to take personal responsibility for that, and for making sure that we understand how to fix it.
All right, we're just gonna go around the U-shape the opposite way, and through the screen. So Director Mizrahi.
So a few clarifying questions and then I think a point to make. A lot of questions we've gotten is just a lack of clarity about the why. So at a school like Lincoln, which I only know about, it's in my district, so I get a lot of the feedback from Lincoln, where they were already doing one 30-minute lunch, not about instructional hours. Why did they change? I want as much clarity for people who are asking as well.
So we've seen that people are interested in a lot of things. We also want to make sure teachers get a 30-minute duty-free lunch. And so all the academic reports and other things that students have brought up, when are those happening? We want to make sure that we have supervisory plans in place that doesn't make sense to have a school with as many students as attend Lincoln High School all in motion at the same time for 30 minutes. Is it feasible? Again, we want to make sure everyone has access to meals, but is it getting them from our lunchroom or the surrounding neighborhood? It's hard to understand how this long list of interests everyone has can be accomplished for 1,700 students all in 30 minutes at the same time. We've had some really serious safety concerns and deaths near campuses during lunch or lunch adjacent, and part of it is how many adults can supervise how many students at the same time. If half of them are in class, we know how they're being supervised. So that was a concern for Conference High School. Is it practical to have everybody in motion at once, and can we manage that well? And it's more than just lunch.
Okay, and the second clarifying question, if I have a point to make, is the 20-minute seated lunch that you mentioned, Dr. Torres Morales. What is that based on? Because I looked at the WAC, I made him look at the wrong WAC. That seemed like it was about K-5, so maybe it was a different law. What is that based on? Okay.
So the WAC is, there's two parts to the WAC, and the WAC is inclusive for all students. And so when you look at it, all of our elementary schools need to comply with Part 1 and Part 2, and all of our schools need to comply with Part 1. The 20-minute part comes in, one, it's a best practice, but two, it's also in our board policy, around 20 minutes to have seated lunch, time for 20 minutes of a seated lunch.
Okay, and then I guess the bigger question I have, the point that I want to make is this question about why the rush. I mean, I appreciate you taking responsibility for it, but it does seem to me like we are putting the cart before the horse. We're saying, we're going to do this, and then we're going to sort of do all this engagement afterwards to try and figure out how to work out the club situation, all the problems that are created from it. And if it was something that you're taking personal responsibility for, the district office is taking responsibility for, it seems like we're making our students suffer for that mistake when we just haven't had time to work out all the different ways to solve these problems. I actually am very confident that there are ways to solve all the problems of making sure that there is club time and that we can supervise a number of students. Like I believe I have confidence in the intelligence and ingenuity of people at central office and our students and our building leadership team that we can figure it out, but we need time to figure it out. So it does feel like this rushed imposition of the plan when just something got lost in translation, why we can't just take a step back and say, you know what, let's take the time to actually do this right rather than doing it.
I think we feel a sense of urgency because we think safety in particular, access to meals are important. Each day that we're not sure we're doing this, we're accepting a certain amount of risk and make the call that we knew this would have impacts and we considered those and we think they matter. And so continuing to operate this way is just isn't our recommendation.
But just to be clear, we are going into it without a clear solution for the problems like when clubs are going to occur.
Again, we've operated comprehensive high schools like this for many years, so I don't know that we need to invent. We had clubs, we had sports, we had, in 2019, our big schools had these kinds of schedules, so I think that to some degree, we can dust off strategies that we had in the past.
Dr. Sardu?
Yeah.
We all make mistakes.
Students make mistakes, parents make mistakes, school board directors make mistakes, principals make mistakes, superintendents make mistakes. We all make mistakes. What's important is how we recover from that. We're gonna have spectacular wipeouts in our lifetime. It's not the wipeout, it's how we recover. If you think about athletes, downhill skiing, the agony of defeat, that slalom skier having a spectacular wipeout and getting back up on those skis. That's thing number one. So I'm not here to chastise or blame anybody. We're talking about students in the third person. I'm looking at any number of students in here. We've got student board directors, but we didn't engage them. They were not engaged before this was gonna, I think every one of the students in here can understand when we say there are laws that we have to comply by, non-negotiable. They know if they're speeding, if they're driving, if you're speeding and you run a red light, you're gonna get a ticket and you're gonna have to pay it, consequences. We need, this situation didn't have to happen like this. And we keep having these situations. So Superintendent Podesta, I hear you say, this isn't about lunch. I'm not sure that students are convinced that anything's going to be different. We have to demonstrate to them that we're committed to including them in the decisions that impact them the most. So now, as a reaction, we're engaging with ASBs, right? And maybe in the future, that's going to be the way, but trust has been broken. We've had too many of these instances. When trust is broken, there has to be repair. And so it isn't just about school lunch. To the parents who've sent the hundreds of emails, if you don't get a response, it's because we can't respond. We're not, we're having this conversation. I mean, we can respond, but it would be performative. I'm not gonna send you a response that says, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't have anything to do with this. I found out the same way you did, in an email. I'm in LA at a school board conference and we get a phone call. So I didn't know about this ahead of time. And this situation represents our deep, deep need to be proactive. We are always behind the eight ball. Seattle Storm doesn't win that game last night without being proactive about the whooping that they took on Sunday. They cannot play differently and they won a game. They don't win that game without actually stepping back and saying, well, that whooping was so bad and we want to have that again in front of our hometown fans. No, they went back to the drawing board and they won the game. We have student board directors. Did I already say that? They're here for us to utilize them. This is not performance for them. Director Yoon doesn't do this twice because she likes the game that we're playing. She's trying to build her leadership skills. Let's start utilizing our students, unless we're actually not preparing our students in our comprehensive high schools to do critical thinking, to understand how the legal system and our school board and our school district work. If that's not what we're doing, then we don't need to engage them. But I believe it's what we are doing and what we should be doing. And I believe they can actually be part of the solution. We just need to give them that option.
Director Masudi, do you have any comments? No. All right, we'll go to Director Clark.
Thanks. So I guess first I just want to say that I appreciate just the acknowledgement of where we are and what happened. And I hope that this situation has highlighted the importance that we listen to our students. I really appreciate them speaking up and, on Monday, to speak out against the split lunch. And I had some great conversations with students that day as well. as the listening session, or office hours that, we hold later in the day. You know, I was an SPS student too. I know what it's like to hear district leaders say they care about students, they center students, that they center equity and justice, and then turn around and ignore it all just to make a decision they wanted to make the entire time. It's been happening for decades, at least since I was a student, if not longer. And I vowed when I was appointed to this office that I would do everything in my power to disrupt and break this cycle. That I would not let this district keep saying they center students and then disregard them in actual decision-making and implementation. So, you know, from what I understand in talking to students, there are different issues that have come up at every single high school, and I don't see how you all can create a one-size-fits-all solution in less than 3 weeks to fix this problem. You know, students are saying that the split lunch harms their education. I've heard from teachers that there are intersecting policies, whether it's the retake policy or instructional hours, or the fact that clubs don't count for instructional hours. This is just a mess. And I also feel that this proposal violated one of our guardrails. That the superintendent won't make major decisions or bring major recommendations to the board without first implementing an engagement strategy with students, parents, teachers, and community members. So I don't see how we can do all of that before October 6th. WASA has a model policy that major operational changes must come before the board for approval. And I know that we are trying to move away from being involved in operational decisions, but given the circumstances and the fact that we have so many additional changes in our high schools coming to meet goal 3, I feel like we might want to consider a 1-year policy that would require this to happen to help us work out the bumps with community engagement, resolve, and just kind of build the muscle that we don't have that keeps leading us back to this place over and over again. I really do expect the superintendent and the staff to solve these problems. Roll back the splits for now and start over, do the engagement with each school community, address the policies that intersect and cause issues for students and staff, and bring that proposal back to the board and share your plan with us. If that doesn't happen, then I think we need to come back and consider this WASA model policy. As you guys said, to meet goal 3, we have to get this right. And I think that getting it right means including student voice in all of it. So no questions, thanks.
Director Yoon? Thank you. I have a comment and a question. So my first comment is I would like to thank Dr. Doris Molas and Deputy Chief Kersey for hosting the initial ASB leadership meeting. This is something we have been talking about for a very long time over the summer, and we wanted to set this as our main goal, to have some kind of platform where we could go to student representatives from different districts and areas to talk about issues they're facing. I would have, or Director Masudi and Mangelson would have appreciated if there was more communication to us. I understood it from just receiving the invite what this was, but they probably didn't. I was in the same position last year, being a student and board member for the first time. And I just wanted to point that out, that more communication and maybe just, like, hey, your presence would be appreciated here because we need you to speak on this, that would be really helpful. Because we really do understand that you're trying your best, and understand that it may be hard to communicate with multiple groups at the same time, but just wanted to point that out. And my other comment was how student voice and student feedback are two different things. Now, this kind of reiterates what Director Sarju said. Student feedback is more of something that is a reaction. students are giving feedback on a decision that has already been made or policies that have already been affecting them. Student voice is something that students, they express their opinions, their thoughts on a decision that is about to be made. We're incorporating what they think and how it's going to affect them. That's why we call it student voice, because we want to make sure the decisions we made and put in place reflect of the lives they have every day at school buildings. So I just wanted to point that out, that there's a difference between student feedback and voice, and one shouldn't outbalance the other. And I appreciate the efforts to try to balance student voice and feedback right now as the result of the situation, but I wanted to point that out. Thank you. I wanted to give Vice President Briggs and Director Rankin time, so I can ask my question later if we're gonna come back to the table.
Go ahead and ask your question.
My question was, so right now at Ballard, or my freshman year at Ballard, we had an hour lunch including passing period, and right now we have a little bit over a 30-minute lunch, and we have replaced that time for 1 hour lunch time with a 10-minute period between second and third. So at the start of third period, we have like a 10-minute advisory block, and we don't do anything in that period. I don't know if this is the same for other schools. I know Lincoln has a 20-minute advisory period, but teachers are sitting there and they want to use the restroom and they can't go because they have to stay with us in the classroom. So although I really respect that you're trying to follow the state laws, I also want to point out that we should really not just be following and making decisions that match the state law. We should also be making decisions that fill in and go through those obstacles of how it's affecting students. Just putting in extra 10 minutes there during the day kind of wastes everyone's time, and it definitely could be utilized more efficiently with test retakes or any other club activities that we want to use during that time. So I just wanted to ask how we are trying to solve that issue. Sorry, it's really long.
Thank you, Director Yoon. And so that was part of why we did the extension until October the 6th, because part of it that we were hearing clearly from you all is that we had a conversation, and we 100% understand that this is school dependent because we've heard different issues from different schools. So, for example, I know I got an update on Ballard today that you all have not implemented the lunch schedule yet because the principals are working on engagement with students to discuss issues such as the one that you just brought up. But in terms of that, I think for me, that's why it's important that we continue this conversation beyond this. Like, once this is solved and it's moved, we need to keep talking with students about the schedule and what's happening and what needs to happen and what's missing, because it shouldn't be that if you did get an advisory period, that it's 10 minutes of we haven't, what you just said, I don't know actually. It needs to be something more substantive, and we need to know that so we can have the conversation and we can support the educators. So, thank you.
Was that advisory, well, you haven't gone to a split lunch schedule, so that was just the schedule at the start of the school year with one lunch? Trying to understand.
Yes.
And again, that time, wherever it is, whether it's one advisory or as part of a 30-minute lunch where we're trying to do many things, that's the base problem to solve. It can't, 30 minutes can't be all these things. It just can't. And so we're gonna have to figure something deeper out.
I just wanted to add on, the issue wasn't about the shortening of the lunch, it's just that we're putting in extra time into classes when they aren't serving a purpose. And I think we need to take in consideration on how it's actually affecting students and teachers in the building.
To me, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we need to look at the whole day's schedule to try to get to a schedule that makes sense for all. We're balancing many different interests, but it seems like that had already been in the plan and it's questionable, so we'll have to look at that schedule.
So, we are going to get to Director Briggs and Director Rankin. We have about 5 o'clock. I try to strictly start public testimony at 5 o'clock. I'm going to apologize in advance that we're going to go till probably about 5:10. We'll start public testimony about 5:10. We have about a third of the folks here talking about lunch, but there are 2/3 here talking about other issues. So with that, Director Briggs.
All right, thanks. I'll try to be as quick as possible.
I think what I'm hearing, from a lot of people, including my own two high schoolers and their friends, is that all of these problems that have been identified are not problems that they're experiencing. So, and I'm hearing this at multiple schools, that there isn't actually an issue with getting kids through the line at lunch. That the way they had it set up was working for them. And it remains unclear, and to be honest, it remains unclear to me exactly what we're solving for, if the school community themselves are saying that it's working for them, and as long as they are in compliance, which it sounds like they are, if they have a 30-minute lunch. I don't know what other, I just don't think, it's really hard to tell people that they're having an experience that they're not having, I guess is what I'm saying. And what I'm hearing is that this doesn't, that there was no problem here until this was introduced. So I guess what I'm wondering, and this is my question, as long as there are no state laws being broken, why can we not leave it up to individual schools to determine what works best for their school community? As long as they're in compliance, otherwise. That's just me. That's basically it.
Again, we've had supervisory issues at lunch. And to understand if in fact we think everybody needs a break, students and staff, that if teachers are all volunteering their time, I'd just like to understand that better. So there are, and then I assume students aren't calculating their instructional minutes. Because we need to make sure this is all actually really working. And even if it's kind of working, are we really, wherever students are getting lunch, are they getting from us or somebody else? Are all those student supports, can they really all be accomplished in 30 minutes? I'm struggling to understand what a club accomplishes in 30 minutes. And how exactly, is that working in terms of how we've done clubs other ways? So I just want to understand it better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It is hard to imagine. Agreed. And I think the solution is that, we would need to go to the school and see ourselves, because I do think it's important to take the words of the community themselves at face value, that it is working. Even if we can't picture that, then let's go see what it looks like, would be my response to that. I'll be done. I'm done.
Director Michelson.
I don't have perfect. Director Rankin. Thank you. All right, I'm the parent of a Hale 11 grader who came home and said, "Mom, what the hell?" I was like, "No, I think Hale's not. I don't know. I'll keep it there." Anyway, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. Trying to figure it out." So you all don't need another person telling you this was handled badly. We're all fully aware that this was handled badly. This also came up 2 years ago, and there was a lack of clarity at that point as well about the why. And because of that, I'm going to totally own, I participated in student-led advocacy and supported them in pushing back against it, because I, as a board director, was not giving the full information about why. It was made to sound very operational and very just lunchroom capacity. I supported students. We, counted lunches and figured out that, okay, if you have under 300 lunches served, it's okay. So we thought, okay, that was kind of a weird thing to make a deal out of when there was such an easy solution. But it turns out that wasn't the whole picture. And so really, this should have been put to rest 2 years ago, because we should have had a real conversation about the why, what are the problems we're trying to solve, bring people who are going to be impacted into it, and we can figure it out. So I own my own participation in that, because I think that's important for us to recognize where our goals are and how we do or don't support progress towards our goals. this time around, I think the whys may still exist, may still be important. But we have to really think about what's an emergency and what's not an emergency, and we created an emergency. We created an emergency where there wasn't one. And the people who are the most responsible for it are actually the least impacted. The kids are the ones that are being the most impacted. And they were incredible in their organization and mobilization across schools. They sent out translated materials, which we, the adults, do not always do. They sent out translated materials to their peers. They had alternative opportunities for students with disabilities who didn't feel comfortable or couldn't get all the way down here so that they could also participate. It was really impressive. They shouldn't have to have to do that for something so simple as what happens during lunch, because we should have included them in the conversation to begin with, and it just didn't have to be such a big deal. It's literally day to day. Lunch happens every day. But to take us up a level, I don't want to be involved in individual school lunchtimes as a board member. I really don't. And where we, the board, are responsible for making, because this is my experience as a community member before coming to the board, as a board member and since, has been, we all write our speeches to get us claps and snaps, and then go home. And we don't change a policy, we don't hold anybody accountable, we vote on extending the superintendent's contract, we vote yes on the budget, and then we're surprised when nothing has changed. That's our authority as the board. The places where we have authority are over policy compliance, the superintendent's performance, which is the district's performance, and the budget. And if we sit in progress monitoring sessions and don't say anything, and accept no growth, if we extend contracts and don't stand behind performance reviews, and if we approve budgets with no changes that we've asked for, we're enabling the system to continue, and it's totally disingenuous for us to be surprised that nothing has changed. So that is actually the power that we do have. What I see as the issues are what I just named for us, the board, and then clearly personnel and internal accountability mechanisms, because there was just so much confusion. And I know that these are not new, these didn't happen overnight for you all, but what we need to understand, what are the requirements for students during the day? What are the priorities that students have? And do they align with the priorities of the full community? I would say, I mean, this is me making a suggestion, but part of the strategic plan probably needs to be a high school instructional day task force, where they receive the information, the task force has the information, here's state statute, here's these other restrictions, here's this, here's that. Task force of a couple principals, some students, parents, central office staff. What would it look like to actually design the high school day around the high school student? And then worry about and educators too, obviously, would be part of that. But too often what I have seen over the last 10 years is, oh, we can't do that because it's in the contract. Oh, we can't do that because it's here. We can't do that because it's here. The board has actually given away so many things that we do have authority over into other places. The board is legally entitled to setting the length of the school day and setting the school calendar. Those have been given away into other agreements. So if this task force wants to make recommendations about what needs to happen during a high school instructional day, that can come to the board as a recommendation, and then school buildings can know, here's what you're required to do, here's what you can't do, but within that, do what makes sense for your school. The problem that we have is we don't set the clear boundaries, and then when people step over an imaginary line, then either the board smacks down staff, or staff smacks down the building leaders, but we haven't been clear about what is and isn't in bounds, and that's also on us. So my question for you, Fred, is I know that you're in this position as an interim, and I know that even though I appreciate you taking responsibility, you didn't create all these problems overnight, but you are in the position to do something about them. So, and you've been around long enough to know kind of where the barriers are. So I'm gonna ask my colleagues, if we can be really clear with Mr. Podesta about what we will and won't be okay with him doing in terms of personnel instructional organization. I am gonna tell you right now, me personally, friend, and this isn't a vote we need to take, but in a memo I sent to the board, it had some identified priorities about, we need to be clear about what we expect from you structurally, what can happen before a permanent superintendent comes in. And I understand you don't wanna do wholesale everything because somebody else is gonna come in, but you know where the problems are. I support you in your full authority as superintendent as authorized by the board in making decisions that you need to make, including personnel and organizational chart decisions. And I would ask my colleagues, maybe not right now, but to be very clear at some point with Mr. Podesta, what the board will and won't support in terms of making changes, because we keep hitting these same problems. And the only way we're gonna stop it is if we insist on actual change, so.
I do think, we all did make a commitment that, the expectations and the evaluation instrument for whatever my interim assignment is, needs to be agreed to by October 15th. So that might be a way for you all to give that direction. It's feeling like, I don't know if I'll make it to October 15th right now, but be that as it may. But be that as it may, there is a vehicle for us to have this discussion that maybe doesn't have to affect board policy. There seems to be a rational way to do this. That would be mine.
We are 2 minutes over or 12 minutes over from our public testimony, so I'm gonna ask directors to please quickly go back to the dais and we will start public testimony. And once again, I'm sorry for starting 12 minutes late for folks who've given their valuable time to be here this evening. And we will be back with you later in the meeting after business for some work session updates.
I'm going to record the public testimony just because so many of the people testifying are minors, and the student director is
All right,
consented
thank you
because
all for participating in the lunch conversation. Thank
Because
you,
they-
Dr.
because they're-
Torres
they
Morales.
knew
and
they were gonna be on
Superintendent
camera, but
Podesta,
other people
we have
don't know they're
now
gonna be on
reached
camera, so
the
I don't
portion
think-
of the agenda that is public testimony. Board procedure 1430 BP provides our rules for public testimony. The board expects the same standard of civility for those participating in public comments as the board expects of itself. As board president, I have the right, and I will interrupt any speaker who fails to observe the standard of civility required by our procedure. A speaker who refuses or fails to comply with these guidelines or who otherwise substantially disrupts the orderly operation of this meeting may be asked to leave the meeting. Public comment is 2 minutes. When the time is up, there is a little dinging and there's a red light on the podium. And then if you keep going past that, I will say, thank you. Please conclude your remarks. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to staff to summarize a few additional points and read off the testimony speakers.
Thanks, View President Tom. The board will take testimony from those on the testimony list and will go to the waiting list if we are missing speakers. Please wait until called to approach the podium or unmute, and only one person may speak at a time. The board's procedure provides that most of your time should be spent on the topic you signed up to speak to. Speakers may cede their time to another person, but this must be done when the listed speaker is called. Time is restarted and the total time remains 2 minutes. The timer at the podium will indicate the time remaining for speakers here in person. When the light is red and a beep sounds, it means that your time has been exhausted and the next speaker will be called. For those joining by phone, the beep will be the indication that time has been exhausted. Moving into our list now, for those joining by phone, please press *6 to unmute on the conference line. And for everyone, please do reintroduce yourself when called, as I may miss some pronunciations as we move through today's list. The first speaker on the list is Nico Bacon.
Hi, I'm Nico, senior at Ballard. It's come to my attention that nearly everyone in this building was in the dark about the plans to split our lunches, and there's a lull in leadership and navigating this change that we've been informed is inevitable. I have questions I think deserved. Furthermore, where will we be building community? I've heard repeatedly that we'll have to shift to the sport after school, and that is not an equitable substitution. There are too many school-based extracurriculars happening directly after the bell rings, not to mention our families and jobs. In that same vein, how will our historically marginalized students find and create safe spaces if we are splitting lunch? At Ballard, the vast majority of our student unions meet during lunch. In these, we work to build community and find ways to get representation within our buildings. Also, how are we going to bounce back from COVID-based social deficits? Lunch is the only real opportunity during the day to interact with peers in an unstructured and non-academic environment. With heightened rates of anxiety and depression in teens, it is critical to provide in-person spaces for interaction that aren't academic performance. If lunch is split, when are test retakes happening? In nearly every one of my classes, retaking a test needs to be done outside of class time, with lunch being the only option for those with extracurriculars. This is also the case for tutoring or with teachers or peers, which is a critical resource in more fast-paced classes. In conclusion, the question I'd like to leave you with is, what separates two lunches from one? I don't want your numerical answer or your false equity answer, and I don't want you to be regurgitating reasons we've all heard over and over again. I want you to ask yourselves why thousands of students are fighting so hard to roll back this change, and whether you truly understand the day-to-day of being a student and the multitude of ways we will be impacted. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jose Vargas.
Hi, this is Jose. I'm seeing my time to leave the room.
Hi, I'm Alicia Winger. I'm a Bridges transition teacher at the Southwest campus. I first want to acknowledge that during the July and August board meetings to approve the moving our Southwest programs out of the Roxdale Annex campus, some board members expressed hesitance to sign off on a plan that did not highlight specific deadlines or action steps for supports and resources to our programs. Yet, here we are. 2 weeks into school with minimum resources or supports from our district to create and foster a meaningful learning environment for our most impacted students. By moving us out of the Roxdale Annex, this removed important necessary resources and isolated those students from independence and community-based instruction even more than before. The move was rushed, and teachers and staff are the ones that are having to patch the holes and figure out all the meaningful solutions around all the challenges we are facing. And what we are asking for is that leadership listens to us, not just hears us, listens to us, makes action, and is willing to provide the supports we need to ensure our students are able to continue growing through this transitional stage of their education. It is not okay. Please support our students and make actionable change, not just hear us. Thank you.
The next speaker is Dave Austin.
Hi, I'm here to talk to you about two different issues. Each one impacts one of my children. The teacher shortage at Blaine K-8 and the two lunch problem at the high schools. First, the high school issue. When I look at the backgrounds of our administrators and our board members, I see Stanford, Harvard, Brandeis, Oregon, Duke, Purdue, UW, and many others. Getting into those schools today is harder than ever, harder than it was pre-pandemic. But two lunches means cutting clubs, cutting time with teachers, cutting time to make up tests. Today's Seattle high schoolers should have the same opportunity to study that you did. Now, to Blaine. A month ago, I asked you to intervene and add a teacher. Since then, I've learned about the 2 FTE policy, and I know Board Director Clark is investigating. But waiting isn't action. Declare 2 FTE dead now. A 5th grade class with 34 kids, many with IEPs, many who missed kindergarten because of COVID, cannot wait for an investigation. And Blaine isn't alone. Families at other schools are facing the same staffing crisis. Interim Superintendent Podesta and Associate Superintendent Torres Morales could fix this today if they chose to. Please choose them. Please choose to act now, add a teacher at Blaine, and kill this double lunch disaster at the high school. Thank you.
The next speaker is Laura Laney.
Hello, my name is Laura Lady. I am the Ballard High School Activity Coordinator, and I'm here representing students, but they represented themselves so well already. Thank you, Mika. As the advisor for ASB, I have spent countless hours attempting to listen to students and their concerns about 2 lunches. But here's the thing, it isn't really about lunches. I personally have attended countless SPS trainings over 19 years, and I've always heard that students are the heart of the work that we do. And I'm standing here and listening to families and students say, students are not being listened to, families are not being listened to, concerns are not being addressed. And so I'd like to conclude with what Nico said earlier. The question I'd like to leave you with is, what separates 2 lunches from 1? I don't want your numerical answer or your false equity answer. I don't want you to be regurgitating reasons we've all heard over and over again. I want to ask yourself why thousands of students are fighting so hard to roll back this change, and whether you truly understand the day-to-day of being a student and the multitude of ways that we will be impacted. Thank you.
Next speaker is Eugene Hawkins.
I cede my time to Susie Beatty.
I'm here to speak for the people who cannot speak for themselves.
Cognitively struggling, hygiene-lacking students who have no classroom hand-washing facilities, toilets, or showers is unsanitary, unhealthy, and unfair, according to WAC. Adequate, conveniently located toilet and hand-washing facilities shall be provided for students and employees. Conveniently located. Is 568 feet convenient? That's nearly 2 football fields from our portable 4 to the One Bridges designated bathroom, which is not ADA compliant. For all Bridges students entering the high school for any reason, they must be accompanied by student staff, and when there's a class full of students, their needs do not align at the very same time. This causes staff shortages in classrooms, especially the many Bridges classrooms that are currently short-staffed. And when illness happens and out-of-control fluids leave the body, how are we expected to support these students with no soap and water in our classroom? Or when this sick student needs immediate bathroom care, a wipey can only go so far. Security is not existent, the first and foremost reason we were told we were moving, and there's no admin on site, another statement we were told. There's no kitchen space for our students to work on their life skills, something our program boasts we work on. There's no quiet space for students, which is essential in this population and required for some IEPs. We have no gym, which provided an outlet for those with excess energy. Our community was walkable from Rocks Hill. We easily access stores and restaurants. The proximity to Metro has increased our commute times by almost an hour. Students' IEPs are not getting met because of this hastily made decision to move the Bridges students. What if these students were your sons and daughters? Would you make different choices so that your child's needs were met? Please consider these students as if they were your own child and provide them with the opportunities they deserve. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jesse McFerrin.
Hello, my name is Jesse McFerrin. I'm a teacher in North Seattle, and my school has been partnering with the Urban Native Education Alliance for the last 7 years. In my experience, making my priorities match the priorities of UNEA leads to better student outcomes, better understanding, better experiences, better reminders of what it means to belong to communities. UNEA is here tonight to urge the board to adopt a boarding school education and Every Child Matters Day proclamation. Every Child Matters Day is a day to remember and honor survivors of boarding schools and recognize the intergenerational trauma caused. In the words of UNEA, the federal Indian boarding school policy was expressly intended to accomplish cultural genocide, the systemic destruction of indigenous identities, traditions, ceremonies, spirituality, and language. I've heard board members tonight talk about involving the people impacted, involving students. You can do that very thing by listening to UNEA. I would like to challenge the Seattle Public Schools Board to adopt this proclamation because we live and breathe on native land. Seattle is home to the Duwamish, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, Snohomish, and other Coast Salish, along with many intertribal people from across Turtle Island. Also because SBS prioritizes instruction and experiences that accelerate growth for students of color, which this would do. Boarding school history is U.S. history. Take the lead as Edmonds and Shoreline districts by adopting boarding school education and September 30th as Every Child Matters Day. Reports, there is a school board candidate forum in North Seattle in the 2:30. Thank you so much.
Today, I was the only staff member with my 7 students. The classroom, I was the only staff member with my 7 students. The classroom downstairs are down 4 staff. Several of these unfilled positions have not been posted for hiring. Quality education cannot occur when staff is pushed to this level of exhaustion daily. While the admin at Rainier Beach have been as supportive as they can, procedures for who handles Bridges' needs while we are on a high school campus is a gray area. Bridges itself has been told they can't use the bathrooms, nurse's office, and security located within the high school. Beach Bridges is missing equipment, access to a sensory room, and even bathroom and classroom keys. Our rooms were not ready when we arrived, and building staff didn't know we were coming or where we should go. It is quite intimidating standing before all of you and the general public today to share the conditions Bridges students and staff are experiencing, what a lot of us feel like we have been bringing concerns to the district's attention for years with no action being taken. I am here to beg you to fight for Bridges and to do everything in your power to give our students what they deserve and instructional spaces that are equipped to meet their needs and the needs of staff to support students in achieving their IEP goals.
The next speaker is Willow Milstein.
Hi, my name is Willow Milstein, and I'm a junior at Ballard High School. I want to start by speaking about the detrimental effects that split lunches will have on students with eating disorders. Lunch isn't just print time for students, as one of the administrators suggested. For many of these people, lunchtime is the only chance in the day to get a nutritious meal. And often that happens only because they feel comfortable and safe eating with their friends. That sense of community, sitting together surrounded by the people they trust, makes it possible for students with eating disorders to eat. By splitting lunches, we risk breaking apart their critical support systems. Students who rely on that feeling of safety may suddenly find themselves isolated and unable to get the nourishment they so desperately need. What's meant to be a simple scheduling decision could have serious consequences, leaving some of our most vulnerable students without the nutrition they need to be healthy and successful in school. I also want to share my experience as a club leader. I founded the Architecture Club at Ballard with my friend this past year. It took a lot of effort to put together, and I was very proud to be able to lead the club and organize a field trip to a local architecture firm. This experience has allowed me to share my passion for architecture and also gain valuable leadership experience, all with only 30 minutes for lunch. With this schedule change, my club will be ripped apart. I urge you to consider adding time to the school day. Just think, by adding less than 6 minutes to the day, you can extend the lunch period to 40 minutes. This would shorten lunch lines, allow time for clubs, and allow students with eating disorders to maintain their existing support network. Lunch is more than just a social time. It offers essential support for students with eating disorders and creates opportunity for all students to develop leadership skills and explore their career interests. Thank you.
The next speaker is Olivia.
Thank you, Nikki. Hello, I'm Denise Diaz, the Vice President of Seattle Education Association, and I read testimony from member Sarah Mead, a paraprofessional at Bridges, Rainier Beach. I have worked in Bridges program for 6 years and an SPS employee for 12. I absolutely love my job. However, in the past 3 years, I have never felt so disrespected. not only for myself, but for my coworkers and students that are in the Bridges program. Bridges is without constant and immediate medical care support. It is unsafe and inappropriate. The district does not prioritize professional development for Bridges educators and gives no release time to take their professional development focused on first aid and CPR, especially since we are often out in the community with our students. There have been times we've asked for bandages, ice packs, gauze, and other standard first aid items only to be pushed back. There is one nurse for Bridges who is amazing, but she is the only Bridges nurse on Mondays. If Bridges is in a school building, we receive resistance because we are not a part of the school. If someone gets hurt, teachers and parents are the primary nurses. If a student requires medication, we are trained to give medications to our student of care, but we have no extra guidance or support other than calling 911. Bridges staff has been told that the program is getting larger. However, it comes to space and we are given very little to which to work with. We are put in portables removed from water stations and bathrooms and the school community. Thank you.
The next speaker is Gordon McDougall.
Good evening. Every child matters. The Urban Aid Education Alliance, youth, elders, and volunteers carefully crafted this resolution for Every Child Matters Day on Thursday, which informs and reminds us of traumas inflicted upon our Native citizens by Indian boarding schools and the resilience and the strength of Native peoples. These traumas continue to echo, and the lessons of history and resilience help us all, Native, non-Native, youth, and elders. I'm a retired SPS teacher. I've worked with UNEA for over 16 years, helping Native youth in our schools, and I celebrate this carefully worded Every Child Matters resolution. Two other local districts, Edmonds and Shoreline, celebrate this tool too, and have adopted it as a board policy. I encourage SPS to continue to support students and families by adopting this resolution. I see the remainder of my time to Sandra Walton, Colville Confederated Tribal Elder.
I'm a boarding school survivor. My experience was different because I went voluntarily. I wasn't dragged from my home, my community, to be sent away to a boarding school. My mom didn't have a choice. My mother-in-law didn't have a choice. They were forced to leave family and home cultural identity behind. This history needs to be shared. It is a part of the shamed American experience. This has affected many families with the trauma, generational trauma, like I said. History like slavery, Japanese internment, World War II, they are taught in schools. Why not Native American boarding schools history? Yeah.
Speaker is Melissa England.
Hi, my name is Melissa England, and I represent Louis Heritage for Education for its community and strongly advocating for the SUV district. And the leader of that, and also first, enrollment at Garfield is down, and it's down because of safety. The number one concern I get from parents asking how my experience has been around safety. If we want to continue to have people support and pick public over private, we need to make Garfield safer. Second, we need to trust and support Dr. Hart. He has fought tirelessly and the community has supported this. We need to support the people on the ground and the leaders on the ground. Third, I also want to call out that the officer is different than any other position in or around the building, and they deter crime and they can respond in an emergency in a way that others can't. And finally, we need to make this decision now. We can't delay the vote. We need to maintain the support of the school in that position. election run out, so please don't delay the vote. I see the rest of my time to Lila.
Hi, I'm Rylan Springer. I've seen you guys quite a few times now. The irony is not lost on me that most people in this room are gathered to speak about school lunches. At Garfield, surviving school lunch is not a guarantee. The irony is not lost on me that most people gathered at this board meeting are here to fight for their clubs. I sat at my vice president's vigil. My first club post was a memorial. We have been waitlisted. We have been postponed. We have been ignored and silenced for 3 months, if not more. There's been no action so far to do anything to stop gun violence. Garfield's kids are in danger every single day they go to school. So while we talk about lunches, let's talk about making sure kids can survive them. Because when I went to lunch, I was used to running from it. I had to drive my friends home because we heard bullets. Please keep that in mind while you discuss your lunches. Thank you.
Next speaker is Karen Zau-Black. Hi, my name is Karen Zog-Black, and I'm a proud graduate of Stevens Meany in Garfield, and a proud parent of 2 students also going to those same 3 schools. I'm here to speak in support of the SEO pilot program at Garfield. Gun violence continues to affect students and schools and families across the U.S., in Seattle, and particularly at Garfield. My daughter's best friend was the student who was shot at the bus stop. And our entire community has continued to mourn the loss of Amara Murphy Payne and other students lost to gun violence, and we're seeing it firsthand every day. Keeping our students safe is a top priority, and one that we should be utilizing every different possible tool or support that we can. Garfield has a long history of successfully having a safety officer at our school who is trained to help notice when people that aren't supposed to be on campus are arriving near our school. So I would like to say, please support the pilot program. This will allow us to gather more data and feedback about how the safety officer can complement with our other safety enhancing strategies that we are utilizing at Garfield, and that can also help benefit schools across the district. Thank you, and I'll see the rest of my time to Luis Barajas.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Luis Barajas. At Garfield High School, I've noticed that when we have a cop, they're usually near their squad car. Not really connecting with their students, and SRO should be more than just a present in the parking lot, but also believe they should not be inside the school building or in classrooms. Their role should be to patrol outside and prevent weapons from coming in or hurting people, and make sure the campus feels safe. Too often, SROs end up making small arrests that don't solve the bigger problem. What we need is an officer who is controlled by the community, protects students, and focuses on preventing gun violence. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jennifer Marquardt.
I would like to cede my time to Jade Warren, please.
Hi, my name is Jade Marie Warren, and I just want to start this by saying I was reminded outside today that if I were just 5 minutes later to getting to school from lunch, it would be me getting shot instead of Amar. So when I talk about SROs today, I want to talk about how much I know that we need safety in our school, because not only have I seen students hurting each other, I've seen adults hurting students. I know what goes on around our school, so I know more than clearly that we need safety inside of our school. But when we talk about safety inside of our school, when we talk about police officers inside of our school, I'm not talking about someone who will also sit outside on their phone playing video games while I watch them and while I have to go into school and just see people who are supposed to be helping us treat us like we are just a paycheck to them, because we are children and we are not something that they need to come in for paycheck to paycheck just to defend us, I say in quotes. But as I say this, we need SROs in our school and we need police officers in our school, but we cannot accept the racist police officers, the misogynistic police officers, those who wish to hurt us and wish to indoctrinate us just because of money, simply because of their racial prejudice, or because of their hate towards women, or because of their hate towards LGBT students. And with the rise of ICE as well, I don't want to sit there and I don't want to bring these people who want us gone into our school. Because Garfield is a black and brown school, no matter how many white students go there. It's a school that was made to support us black and brown children, and if we are bringing in people who want us gone or who want us dead, then that's wrong, and that's crude to say. So here I am today, asking for SROs who want to be a part of our community, who want to get to know us as children, and who see us as more than just color, or as more than just money, or as more than just immigrants. Those are the people who need to be in our schools protecting us, the people who want to protect us.
My speaker is Sherilyn Calvin.
Hello, this is Sherilyn Calvin with the Seattle Special Education PTSA. I am stuck in traffic and I am rewriting my testimony. I am here to talk about the Bridges program in Southwest Seattle, although I also amazed at the problem in South Seattle at Rainier Beach, a brand new program. I speak both as a board member with the Seattle Special Education PTSA and as a parent of a Bridges student. I will not go through the list. We have heard about the problems with the location, but I want to explain to everyone else hearing, Bridges is a federally required program that transitions students ages 18 through 21 from special education and out of the system. They need to have job training, life skills training, and preparation for future education and employment. Something as basic as an ADA compliant portable restroom will immediately solve one of the biggest issues, the bathroom. Toileting is a very real issue with many of the students that are in Bridges. I also want to talk about the fact that my son will go every day to a location where he practices work, where he is gaining skills so that when he gets out of Bridges program, he can find a meaningful activity in his life, whether that is paid or through volunteer work. I want you to understand that the students who are in the Bridges program at Beach, at Self, and like my son at Ingram, are human. They are students. They are SPN students. It's so, thank you.
Being recruited here to back home in a war that they don't want to be. It's really a program we need. Do recruiters think that the goal for youth to be in military aid in wars should we be in a space where military is prioritized? No. Migrant families moved here for a better life, but instead lives in a country where prioritizes profit and power. The youth with limited resources need actual solutions like quality education and services, not predatory military recruitment just because they promise them financial support and security. We demand you, as the board, to take stands and defend the right of working class migrant youth to safe, accessible, and quality education. Do not lift the limit of military recruitment visits to schools. Thank you.
The next speaker is Zoe Bryant.
My name is Zoe Bryant, and I'm a sophomore at West Seattle High School. I want to first thank Ms. Top, Ms. Clark, and Ms. Marie for listening to students the other day in their office hour call. I recently got my mock trial club started this year after being unable to start it last year due to overcrowding issues that I've spoken about here before. I've spent hours this past summer figuring everything out, like getting local attorneys as mentors and teachers as my sponsors, and all the recruitment that comes with making a team. Clubs like mine give students the chance to learn valuable skills for life and for school, but this lunch splitting is going to really harm those clubs. Since I'm running this mock trial, my team would be going into competitions, making lunch meetings essential to practice, prepare, and learn the current pace for the competition. I already know 2 people who are unable to join the club's meetings any other time than during school, which is completely unfair that just because they aren't available after or before school, that they don't get the option to participate in clubs, especially since SPS is supposed to value equity for students, but making this lunch change would not give most students an equitable chance to participate in most clubs that they would want to. We can't have clubs during school at all other than the 30-minute lunch, the 30-minute blocks on time on Friday advisories if you split lunches in 2. 30 minutes is nowhere near enough time to do all of that clubs need to do to prepare and learn, so I urge you to rethink this decision. I urge you to leave these lunches alone until we can formally plan, make different options, or make a different way to get to all the regular.
Wilson. I'm a member of the nation. I'm a grandmother and a lifelong resident of Seattle. I serve as Urban Native Education Alliance elected chair. UNEA is a grassroots, Native-led, student-organized, student-centered organization. Our 18 years of advocacy and support for Native student success is a model for uplifting the voices of Native students while providing culturally responsive mentorship, tutoring, and a variety of educational, cultural, and academic opportunities. I'm here today to advocate for Seattle Public Schools' adoption of UNEA Resolution Number 9, boarding school education across all ages in schools, and to designate September 30th as Every Child Matters Day, or Orange Shirt Day. The boarding school resolution brings voice and truth to a legacy of lengthy 100-year era of United States government-sanctioned forced assimilation policies. The resolution was co-created by Native students, parents, educators, elders, survivors of boarding school, and the National Native American